I got something to say. Woohoo! I'm so excited about my next guest. I was actually a guest on Bobbi's show. That's right, and she was freaking awesome. The Unyielded Show, thriving no matter what. And I thought she was so amazing. She was quite the bomb that I said to her, May into June. And then somebody said, hey, I need to reschedule. And right away I thought of Bobbi. And she's like, I can do it. Yay! So I was so excited. And now I'm bringing her in. And she's doing it. You know, it's a new thing for her. She's like, Sandy, I've never done this before. And it's like, don't worry. If it works, it works. If not, it doesn't. Yay! Woo woo! And it worked the first time, Bobbi.
It worked the first time. Who can believe that?
All right. So we're just going to get right into it. I'm going to read your bio because I got so many questions for you. There's no way it's going to finish up in 30 minutes. You ready?
I'm ready.
All right. I love this. Bobbi has been called the Lighthouse of Positivity. In her roles as a podcaster, which we were talking about it, facilitator, coach, and speaker. She has inspired tens of thousands of people, giving them the spark to imagine new possibilities, try things they've never thought possible. Bobbi leaves every learner with the gift of hope, knowledge, and assurance that they can be more fulfilled and successful if they choose. Well, Bobbi, this is definitely up my alley.
It's kind of the sandbox to play in, isn't it?
Well, I was so intrigued that I have to admit I did do a little digging, you know, to get a little bit more of your story. And I went on your website, which everyone has to go on, and I did not know about your books, which we'll get into that. But I sincerely love this quote, which you need to build on.
Okay.
Most people haven't heard a doctor tell them you shouldn't be alive. What the heck? Where did that come from, Bobbi?
Oh my goodness, Sandy. So back on March 6th of 2003, so coming up on a 20-year anniversary, I collapsed. And that day when I got out of bed, I could barely walk to make it into the bathroom, and I could no longer raise my forearm to brush my teeth. Now, in truth, that had been building for maybe 10 months or so, where I was progressively getting more and more fatigued. I was feeling worn down all the time. But I think so many times what we do when we're trying to make stuff happen, we say, don't be a baby, push through it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So the downside of doing that is eventually it's going to catch up to you. And it turned out to be a 10-year journey back to health. Within 6 months, I'd been to so many different doctors. No one knew how to help me. One doctor said at one point, he's like, based on what we think you have, people only like 3% of the people experience a full recovery. And Sandy, sometimes I'm a little hard-headed because I'm like, okay, that's great, no, but when can I go for a run again?
Yeah.
And he's like, no. Yeah. He's like, you might have to accept that your days of being an athlete are over. And I thought, no, I don't. I've always been an athlete. I will find a way to be an athlete. So, but when the doctor said to me, that particular doctor, that was it was December of 2006. So 3 years later, I'm still working my way through it. And he put me through this battery of tests. So he calls me back in the office, and we're going over the results. And I'll never forget it. He's looking at a piece of paper, and he looks at the results, looks at me, looks at the piece of paper, and he's like, well, we're going to have to do these again. I'm like, why? And he said, because these results can't be right. And I said, well, how do you know that? And he said, because you wouldn't be alive. So we did that kind of gave me chills. But I thought, well,
That's a moment in life. Yeah.
But truly, I thought, well, somehow the results are just wrong. So we did the test again, and they came back exactly the same. And he said to me, he's like, Bobbi, I don't know how you're alive, but you are. We know what we're starting from, so let's get you well. And that'll get your attention, though, let me just tell you.
All right, this is a whole 4-hour podcast. Oh my goodness. I had no idea it was a loaded question. Okay, tell me more. Tell me more.
So we started, he started helping me, and so that was like January of 2000, December 2006, somewhere in there. Took about, I would say, a year to 18 months after that of really being intentional with taking care of myself, where my results finally came back normal. But I'll tell you what, Sandy, that was the scariest part of my journey, because my results were normal, but I still felt terrible. Like, oh, athlete, right? I was a runner. I lifted weights. I did, I did all this kind of stuff. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm not sick, but that doesn't mean I'm well. And that terrified me. I'll never forget, like when I was a runner, before getting sick, my resting heart rate was like around 45. And I was always kind of proud of that,
Yeah, yeah, I would be proud of it too.
Yeah. So I'll never forget, my doctor's like, okay, you can start, go to a club, go to a workout, facility, whatever, start walking, start building up your strength again. So I'm on the treadmill. I'm walking a 30-minute mile. And I used to be able to run 3 to 4 miles in that amount of time before getting sick.
Yeah.
And my heart rate was 170. 170. And I was like, this is the hole that I'm in. And I was like, I got off the treadmill and I'm standing there. I'm trying not to cry. And this guy who worked there, he came over and he's like, what's wrong? And I told him the whole thing. And he gave me a hug and he's like, look, that is just where you are today. Keep putting in the work. And now, forward, however many years, now I am a better athlete than I ever was before.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm a road cyclist. I cycle mountain passes out here in the Rocky Mountains. I'm a cross-country skier. I do my weights. I paddle board. I mean, it's just, yeah, but what a journey, what a journey. And that's why I believe that there's always a way forward. Always. Not easy, but there's always a way forward.
Okay. Well, that's taken me in a whole other direction. There's so much back here. All right. So let's go back a little bit before that. All right. You said it started in 2003?
Yeah. March 6th, 2003 was when I collapsed. I couldn't even look in my hands. Like I couldn't lift my head off the pillow. It was unbelievable.
Okay. So before that, even a few years before that, were you feeling great, or were you just and like ignoring things?
Oh, no. I felt great. I mean, I was continuing to run. It really started, like I say, 9 to 10 months before the collapse. And it started slowly. Like, I'd wake up to go to, networking meetings and I'd be like, God, I really feel tired. But everyone feels tired, so you keep going. And then that morphed into I was too tired to cook dinner quite a bit. So what do? You start ordering pizza, so now your choices are getting worse.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then it changed into, I would say it was like the September before, I was like, wow, I'm really so tired that when I'm taking a shower, it's hard to stand up the whole time. Like I'd sit down in the shower. And then like I'd take a shower and be like, God, I'm exhausted. I'm going to go lay down for a few minutes before I put my makeup on. So it was a very slow descent. But if at any point, had you gone from feeling really good to, I can't stand up long enough to take a shower?
Yeah.
You'd be like, the doctor. But it didn't happen that fast. It was a classic, what do they talk about? The frog, if you put it in boiling water, it jumps out. But if you put it in cold water and gently, slowly heat up the water, it stays there because you don't notice it. You just don't notice it until it's a crisis. So yeah, looking back, I'm like, how in the world did I miss it?
Yeah, no, I get it. All right. So up until that point, were you, because you talked about how many people you have coached, were you in the same profession you are in now before that?
Well, yes, because I started my own business in 2000. And so I was doing a ton of speaking, and I loved speaking. I loved it. I loved being on the stage. I loved facilitating. So that's what I was doing at that point. I started my own business, and I think that's part of what led to it. Because when you start your own business, like everything begins and ends with you. So, it's easy to push yourself too hard. And because I'd always been so healthy and so fit, I don't want to say I took it for granted, but maybe I did.
Yeah, we do. We do. Yeah. You like, because you've been that way your whole life.
Right.
You've always taken care of yourself.
That's right. That's right.
Okay. So now, oh my, I'm just sitting there. I'm still back with the doctor saying, hey, how are you alive? Like, I'm still trying to get out of that, because that could just put you in bed not to come out. I mean, you know?
Exactly. And think about it, that was almost 3 years into this journey. But it was like, I just kept thinking, okay, so let me back up to when the doctor, it was in August of 2003. He was like the 5th or 6th doctor I saw. And he's the one that said, you know, only about 3% of people will experience full recovery. And so many people over the years, when I've shared that story, Sandy, they're like, well, why didn't you get discouraged when you heard 97% of people wouldn't? And I'm like, because that's not what I heard. I heard 3%. Of
course you did.
Of course, right? So to me, what I knew, I didn't have the answer, but I knew that someone did. Either those people or the people who treated them. Someone had the answer. And to me, it was just, okay, this is just where we are. And now what's next? So when that first doctor told me, not my first doctor, but the doctor who said about the 3%, or the doctor who said you shouldn't be alive, one of the great gifts that came to me out of this whole experience is, before this, I was really good at arguing with what is. Like, well, it shouldn't be this way, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. And so once this happened, it was like, okay, this is where we are. Now what do I do? So by that point, it had just become this automatic pattern of, okay, this is where we are. I don't like it, but I can't argue. I don't have the energy to argue with it, right? So accept it and say, okay, what's next? What's next? So when he said that thing about, you know, when I came back for the test results the second time, and he's like, I don't understand it, but at least we know where we are. To me, I felt hope, because he's like, hey, this is what we're doing. Fantastic. That's awesome. There's something we can do.
Bobbi.
Yeah.
I mean, look. So I can totally see how this must be a gift to everyone you touch.
How so?
Having gone through that and experienced that, I mean, you know, there's only so many things you can read in a book and apply, but you having that experience, it had to change your whole perspective with the clients you were working on.
It changes everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's part of the reason I share that story, is because I want people to feel hope about that. You know, like, hey, because we all experience dark times, and those times look different, you know, depending on the circumstances. But one of the things we shouldn't do is judge our circumstances in terms of, well, it's not as bad as so-and-so. Doesn't matter if it's tough for you. But I'll tell you what the other thing is, Sandy. Before getting sick, I don't know if I lived at the same level of gratitude that I do. Like this afternoon, when we're done, I'm going to have lunch, and I'm going to go cross-country skiing. This will be day 36 for me of cross-country skiing this season.
Okay, now I'm getting jealous. I don't get jealous, but I'm getting jealous. Go ahead.
But when I'm out there, it gives me a different sense of gratitude. It's like I no longer have to work out. I get to work out.
Yeah.
You know, I don't take a single day out there for granted. It's like, oh my goodness, you know, easily could have been that I wasn't even here, that these last 20 years, you know, I could have missed out on. So I try to live with that mindset.
And yes, I'm glad you do tell your story, because a couple things you said right off resonate. It's not a contest on how many hills you went up. You know what I mean? Like, everyone's journey is everyone's journey. But they can see that you are living and breathing what you're teaching others. And you've applied it to your own life in the most severe situation.
That's
and
right.
The fact that you've, like, for me, it's all about resetting and retraining how you look at things. And the fact that you heard, oh, so I'm one of the 3%.
Why wouldn't I be in the 3%? Of course so.
Oh, Bobbi, awesome. Love it. Love every minute. And I had no idea of that story. Thank you for sharing. I don't think we're going to get to many of the questions, but that's okay. They can reach out to you. So let's go through 3 of the fundamental truths that you have found out.
Yes.
Why don't you just go through them one by one, and we can pick them apart just a little bit.
Okay. So a little bit of context, very briefly. These came about actually because of an experience I had when I was 23. I came from a family, they didn't believe in higher education. So my parents, I had to fight with my mom to stay in high school. She wanted me to drop out. So I knew I'd have to find my own way through college if I was going to do it. So I'm 23 years old.
Back up a second. Your mom wanted you to drop out of high school?
Yes.
Okay. All right, continue on.
Okay. So there I am. I'm 23. I don't have a college education. I do have a high school education because I stayed in school. I'm working 2 jobs, barely keeping my head above water. It's New Year's Eve. I go home, worked my 2 jobs, went home, sitting in my lonely little dark apartment. I'm like, how in the world did my life turn out this way? I mean, I was a good student, you know, and here I am barely making it. And I'm like on this path to freaking nowhere. So I asked that question in the universe. How did my life turn out this way? And the answer that came back is that my life is a reflection of the choices that I've made so far. And at first, I wasn't really pleased with that answer. I'm like, damn, maybe it's my fault. But then I thought,
take responsibility. There you go.
That's right. But I thought, oh my God, that is so hopeful. Because if I can learn how to make better choices, which I can learn, then I can get better results. So out of that whole experience came my 3 fundamental truths. And the first one is that the future can be changed, right? It didn't matter that I was sitting in that little dark apartment and that I didn't have a college education and that my parents were going to pay for it. And this was so long ago that financial aid was hard to come by. My dad made too much money, technically. So they're like, well, you figure it out on your own.
Well, they didn't believe in higher education anyhow. So there you go.
There you go. Yeah. Right? So that's the first thing. Because I think so many times we get stuck thinking, my present is my future. No, the future can be changed. So that's the first one.
Okay, say that one more time.
Okay, so the future can be changed, right?
But we think the present is the future. I gotcha.
You know,
yep.
Some people call it our automatic futures. You know, so if we just stay on this predictable path or our predictable future, then that's going to be where we go. And
Gotcha.
That's not the case at all. The future can be changed, right? It is not set in stone.
Thank God. All right, go ahead.
Okay, so the fundamental truth number 2 is that you can change your future, meaning you're the one to do it. Because I know in my heart, when I was sitting on that couch as a 23-year-old young woman, I was hoping for someone to come knock on my door and say, let me help you, right? Let me help you go through school. Let me help you, you know, with the realization that no one was coming to rescue me. That was one of the most empowering moments of my life, because I thought, you know what? I don't need to be rescued. I can do that for myself. I have the ability to change my future.
Okay.
And that was incredibly powerful for me. And then the third one is simply, you don't have to wait. And with that, what I mean is in having coached as many people as I have, so many people think they have to have the perfect plan, or, you know, all the resources, or you know, they need to know all the details before they can get started. And nothing is further from the truth. If you have a plan, fantastic. I'm not saying that's bad, but if you don't, that doesn't matter. Because what I know is that you can learn what you need to learn along the way. It just doesn't matter. You can learn what you need to learn along the way. And that's I think that's one of the big ways that I've helped people in my coaching career, is to help them understand, okay, this is where I want to go. These are some skills to learn, or skills, behaviors, mindsets, whatever that might be. Here's how I can go about learning them. But we don't, we can get started, because action, this is something I believe very, very passionately, action is the antidote for despair, right? When we take an action, we feel more hopeful. Think about when I was in the doctor's office and he said, wow, I don't understand how you're alive, but now that we know what your starting point is, here's what we can do. That was action that I could take, and that gave me hope, and hope makes a person keep going.
Bobbi, you're awesome. I mean, I love the way you're breaking it down, because people are going to be, I know they're sitting out there, and I'm getting emails too. Oh my God, I didn't think of it that way. That's so true. And so many, and it's okay, people, we get it out there, that I'm getting here, are people that are highly motivated people, but they feel that the things that they want, that they keep working on and keep working. Yeah, I can't do that yet until I get done this. I can't do that yet until I get done this.
That's right.
It's the all or none theory versus, okay, I really want that. Like you said earlier, like, if I keep doing it this way, well, the outcome's going to get me the same thing I got last time.
That's right. So it's riskier to not change.
Okay. Calm down, everyone out there. I'm going to get to a few of them. And then you can reach out to Bobbi. She's going to tell you everything. All right. So, Bobbi, we're going to just try to get through the top ones I'm getting here, and I make up names.
Okay.
So, here's Sally Bell. Sally, this is a lot of them. Let's call it she has a solid life. She likes her life, likes her family, likes her kids, likes her job, whatever. But it's just, they hear me say it, solid. So she doesn't know how to get out of that and doesn't want to be one of those people that it has to hit rock bottom. But she knows there's more, because she just feels, quote, blah, 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 blah. Oh, I like that one.
Yeah.
So everything's okay, but she wants more, and then she starts, but then it becomes too difficult because her life isn't horrible. She wants, I know this is a big one, but she wants some advice.
Yeah, that is a big one. First of all, let me say, at different points in my life, I've been there, where I thought, actually what I thought at different points were, is this all there is? You know? So a person's journey is their journey, right? And sometimes that means you have to make a big change. Sometimes it means you just need to incorporate more things in, things that bring you joy, things that feed you. And I know that as women, I'm not a man, so I can't speak to that experience, but I know as women, a lot of times when we think, well, I want to add something in, we tend to feel selfish, right? Well, how can I, I've got kids, you know, how can I possibly take 10 minutes for myself or 30 minutes for myself? So I think that's one of the things that can trap us, right? And kind of, so an exercise that I do with people there, and I'm hoping this will be helpful, is I call it the hypothetical game. So I'll take that. Let's say someone says to me in a coaching session, you know, it's selfish of me if I want to, you know, take up pickleball or painting or whatever it might be, but to do something for myself that brings more joy into my life. Play the hypothetical game and say, okay, let's just pretend for a moment that statement is false. The statement of it's selfish of me to take time for myself is false. What are all the ways that it could be false, right? And so here's one way, right? By spending time on myself, by taking care of myself, I'll be better for others, right? If you have kids, by doing something for myself, I am role modeling to my children that it's okay to take care of of themselves, right? So to think about all the ways that it might be false. And what I always tell people is come up with at least 5 to 6 ways that statement could be false. Because by the end of that, you're like, oh my goodness, maybe I'm not seeing this the right way. Okay, so that's one thing.
I love that.
It's just a very valuable exercise. I've used it many, many times. And I would say that feeling of my life is okay, I've been there, and I've had to ask myself, is okay enough? You know,
Yeah.
if I'm at the end of my life looking back, is okay enough? And it doesn't, again, it doesn't have to mean that we make radical changes, right? It might just mean that some things are missing. So to take that time and to sit in a quiet place, and I don't mean physical place, but, you know, quiet our minds and say,
Yeah.
what would bring joy? What would bring meaning? What would make me feel more fulfilled? To really think about those things. And those are only things that we can answer for ourselves. But I will say that one of the things that keeps us kind of stuck is the busyness of our lives. Because we don't have that time to take.
That's so true.
Mm-hmm.
I hear it. You know what? It's so funny. Not funny, but I hear it over and over again from people in the self-help area. Meaning they know that they're supposed to be Jesus, therapist, and they're like, yeah, Weston, I know it, but I just can't get off the train.
That's right.
I actually said to one of my friends, she's a psychotherapist, there was this toad, and it was on, like, you know, the old record player, and he was just going round and round and round, and she's like, oh my God, that's my life. And yet I hear it all the time. I should know better.
That's right. And here's the thing. It doesn't mean that you have to go on a week-long retreat, right? Even starting with as simple as 5 minutes a day. Actually, someone was on my podcast, and she said she used to be in the corporate world, and her life was so chaotic. She was like a COO or something like that, a CFO maybe. And she said what she did is 5 minutes. She'd set her alarm 5 minutes early. And those first 5 minutes, she didn't get out of bed. That was her time to just feel grateful, her time, you know, just to kind of be with herself. And she said it completely changed things for her because it opened up new space, because we need new space to open up new possibilities.
Ooh,
right?
I love that.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. And I'm all about the few-minute things, because I agree. You might end up doing more.
That's right.
But even just doing that few minutes for yourself, you're like, wow,
yeah,
I do feel better. I am able to help myself and others more, you know?
Just 5 minutes. 5 minutes. Start.
I love that. All right, we're going to get one more in.
Okay.
One more in. Let me see. Okay, this is a good one. Tell Bobbi, thank you for telling us the story of her journey with the doctors. Did it take her a long time to find the right doctors who had more of a positive, optimistic attitude? Not that I have any major issues right now, but I avoid going to them because they seem so doom and gloom.
That's right. Oh my goodness. First of all, you're welcome. Yes. The first several doctors I saw were doom and gloom. One was so insulting. She's like, just stop and smell the roses. I'm like, that's great advice, but I can't even lift my head up off the pillow, so you're not helping me. So yes, and I say that's really important when we're a patient, or when we're even looking for a doctor when we're healthy, is to find one that is not doom and gloom, right? That's going to have more of a holistic approach, but one that you feel like you resonate with and that you can talk to. And I was lucky. I found 3 separate doctors at different times where I'm like, wow, I can really talk to them. They challenged me when I needed to be challenged. But it wasn't easy. It wasn't easy to find them. I had to be he was my boyfriend at the time. He's my husband now. We weren't even engaged when I got sick. And I told him at one point, I'm like, hey, I totally understand if you didn't sign up for this and you want to leave. He's like, nope, we'll get through this together. But that was a beautiful moment in our relationship.
Yes.
But we worked on it, we worked on it together. We never stopped looking for doctors, and they do exist. The good ones like that, they do exist.
Yeah. Bobbi, it's sad. It's very sad. We have to go. I'm going to take a few minutes. Tell them about the Unyielded Show, Thriving No Matter What, and when you started it and why.
Okay. So that is my podcast. I started that in July of 2020 because I've been thinking about it for a year, and the pandemic gave me a great excuse. Hey, you're not on the road traveling all the time, so there goes your excuse. But I started it because over the years, I've heard so many wonderful stories from like people who've gone through workshops or they've, just meeting people. And I think they have these wonderful, inspiring stories, and we need to hear more of that, right? Because when we hear someone else's story, that inspires us to keep going. And so that was really my basis, my reason for starting it.
And it's awesome. And you're a great host. You're a phenomenal host. Phenomenal. All right. How else can they reach you? Not just to listen to your podcast, but to work with you or your books.
Okay. So you can find out about my books, the podcast, everything. I have a newsletter. It's all on my website, which is just bobbikahler.com. And we're in the process of refreshing the website because right now it's gotten kind of buggy and it's a little bit slow. So we're in the process of fixing that. So that's one way. And then also I'm very active on LinkedIn. And so I post about 4 times a week now.
Okay.
And I post a combination of like on self-leadership, which is kind of my area. How do we intentionally lead ourselves in the direction that we want our lives to go? And then I also have some like more motivation, to inspire and keep people going because it's sometimes we need that.
We all
need it.
All right.
And it makes me
hey, I got something to say, people. We really appreciate you taking the time to be here. And if you didn't see it from the beginning, don't worry, calm down. I'm recording it, and I'll put it on all social media platforms so you can share it. Bobbi, thank you so much for coming on. And thank you a million times for sharing your journey and your story. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, people, you know what I'm going to say. Until next time, toodles. Bye, Bobbi.